Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Moment of Joy. I am your host, Joy Stevens, and today we're talking about poison. Stick with me. I'm going to tell you a story. So, not too long ago, I was walking around downtown with a friend of mine, and he was on the phone, and he's on the phone, I'm on the phone, he's talking to whomever he's talking to, and I hear him say, okay, I'll catch you later. I bet, bye. And then he stops, lets out a little expletive, dials the phone right back, and he goes, hey, I love you too. Okay, bye. And so I stopped to look at him like, who's that? Because I'm nosy. And he goes, that was my son. Okay. And then he says, I'm trying to make sure I always tell him I love him. That's really wonderful. And he goes, I'm trying to change things up, I didn't hear that a lot. And I don't want to be the kind of father that doesn't tell my son I love him. And it was so beautiful. I understood what he was trying to do. What he was trying to do was break that generational pattern of not expressing love to your male children. The poison that we're talking about today is toxic masculinity. Before you turn this camera off, let me explain what I mean. Most people think of toxic masculinity as something to be projected specifically in the arena of misogyny and sexism, projected onto women. Toxic masculinity is a poison that affects men just as much as it affects women in different ways. What my friend was trying to do was stop that poison from spreading into the next generation. He was trying to show his son that it was okay for men, heterosexual men specifically, to say, I love you to each other. And what he explained to me was that as he was getting off the phone, he heard his son say, all right, love you, Dad. And he said, I bet, and hung up. And he called him back to say, hey, I love you too. It meant a lot to him to make sure his son heard him say that too. He was trying to change that paradigm. And I found it very admirable. I was actually very happy to have experienced that with him. And so toxic masculinity at its base form is really the inability that has been conditioned, inbred, rewarded, and perpetuated over time that forces, and I'm using that word specifically, forces men to separate themselves from their emotional base. And it rewards them for successfully doing so. And we see it in phrases like man up, boys don't cry. Oh, you're going to cry about it? Like all these things. Bullying, when people do show emotion. Suck it up. Get over it. Do some push-ups. Man up. All these things that we teach young boys, teenagers, young adults. We even do it in corporate spaces. Don't be such a wuss is leaning into misogyny there. Thinking that showing emotion is showing weakness. That showing weakness or vulnerability is an inability to lead. We reward, in some instances, leaders who are harsh, who are unfeeling, who show no empathy, and they tend to turn around and hire people just like themselves. We ridicule, we disparage, we marginalize people who do show emotion. I recently had a conversation with a very high-powered person who told me as they were struggling through an inordinate amount of grief that they couldn't figure out how to move day to day because they felt that their brief relapse of showing tears on camera was unprofessional. There's nothing unprofessional about grief if you're feeling it, right? Our inability to be a full person at work is what we are trying to get past, right? We're talking about inclusion at work. We're talking about bringing your full self to work. That means bringing your emotions with you. And if you have separated yourself successfully from your emotions, you don't even know how to do that. That is the damage. That is the poison. That is the toxicity that I'm talking about today. That's the damage of toxic masculinity. I'll give you another story. I was in a movie theater, and as I'm sitting there enjoying the movie, I hear a bunch of teenagers to my right as we reach a very emotional point in the movie, and the male lead in the movie is crying. And he's crying over a death. He is crying over a death of someone close to him. And I listen to these 14, 15-year-old boys ridicule him. They're bullying the star in the movie. Oh, he's crying. I hear this next to me because at 14 and 15 years old, they've already been conditioned to believe that him showing those emotions makes him weak. And that if they don't ridicule him, they may be the next target. They're acting in the way they've already been taught to do to protect themselves. That is the damage of toxic masculinity. This is poison. And poison is indiscriminate. Poison spreads. Poison needs an antidote. And that is why I was so proud of my friend who stopped in the middle of the street and didn't just let it walk by. He didn't just let it go. He stopped and he dialed his son back and said, hey, I love you too. That is the antidote. Is showing love, being in touch with your emotions, having the courage to get back in touch with your emotions, recognizing that vulnerability takes bravery, and that if you really want to be strong enough to cry. This is what I'm encouraging everyone to do. I'm not telling you to just start indiscriminately crying for no reason at work. What I'm telling you to do is be brave enough to say, I don't know what to do next. I'm worried. I'm anxious. I'm struggling. Let people who work for you see you question yourself. Think about the power of allowing yourself to have a bad day and letting other people feel the agency of saying, I can have a bad day too. And how freeing that would be to the entire organization to recognize that we're all human, that we're all human beings. And that sometimes we just can't figure it out. Stop the poison. Think about it. Thank you.